The year's 2025 and Claire Obscure just swept the Video Game Awards, and in between the celebrations, we got an announcement for a new game by Larian Studios. That game was Divinity, the newest title in Larian Studios' Divinity franchise, which at this point consists of 6 different games and started back in 2002 with the first game, Divine Divinity. To most gamers, Larian Studios will be more known for Baldur's Gate 3, which won many Game of the Year awards back in 2023. That game was basically an accumulation of things the studio had learned and perfected over the years, and I think that's a big reason why the game had such a big success. Now I have played Baldur's Gate 3, but I never touched a Divinity game in my life. So with the announcement of Divinity, I thought, what better time than now to look back at the series? I'm Nik Von Crait and welcome to the Best RPG, the series where I try to find my favorite RPG of all time. And in today's episode, we are looking at Divinity Original Sin. So, Divinity Original Sin is a game that I was always aware of, but never actually played until now. I played the game's enhanced edition on PC for this video, and let's just say it was definitely an experience, and I'm really glad that I had some knowledge of the mechanics from Baldur's Gate 3. The game definitely isn't the easiest RPG out there, and combat can be a challenge sometimes, even if you have some experience with the systems. The combat in this game is turn-based, and you work in a party of up to 4 people. Original Sin does something different to other party-based RPGs, since in this game you actually create 2 characters and also play as these 2. That means your party will always consist of 2 people instead of the usual one and only main character. You can set up the characters how you like, from the looks to how they act. One interesting choice that comes from this is the fact that when both characters have a dialogue, you pick both choices, and it can feel really weird at times since you're talking to yourself. Going back to the combat and the world traversal, the elements play an important role here, and you have to be really careful of where you step and what the ground looks like. You could either stand in an oil puddle, which can start burning when fire connects to it. You have water puddles that can stun you when they get hit by electricity. If the ground is frozen, you might slip and fall. Then there's also poison, which can also appear in clouds. If they get hit by fire, they will explode. The schools of magic are also split in a similar way, with earth, fire, water, and air. And on top of that, they can also use witchcraft spells, which contain summons and things like charming the enemy so it fights with you instead of against you. This can make combat really fun and give you a lot of advantages, but it gets really annoying in the overworld, and it has ruined my experience so much because 40% of my gameplay was just spent on reloading because the world is filled with so many traps once you leave like the major towns. It feels like you can't walk around for 5 minutes without stepping on a mine and dying. I think the random enemies that just appear when you're walking through the map are a lot less tedious than the traps in this game. Now you can somewhat dribble around this problem by having a high perception stat on one of your characters so that you can uncover the traps without stepping on them. But unfortunately, the AI companions just love to trigger the mines on their own and end up killing the whole squad by accident. The problems really start to appear in the last couple of maps of the game, with my main nightmare being the Phantom Forest. That's mainly because it was the most recent area, and it got me to a point where my eyes were twitching uncontrollably instead of getting angry and cussing the game out. And by God, if I ever have to hear the words "Intruder Spied" said in an Arnold Schwarzenegger voice again, I will set this realm on fire. Okay, let us all just calm down now and talk about the actual setting of this world so you get a better idea of it. Divinity Original Sin takes us to Rivellon, and we get to visit 4 different areas of Rivellon in this game. The first being Cyseal, which is a well-mixed area. You have the main town of Cyseal, which is really bright and colorful. There are also some nice beaches, but also some dark graveyards and an area that is completely on fire. Now, most of these areas follow the same pattern, but just slightly different. The second area we enter is Lucula Forest, which is a lush forest that has a main town, Silverglen, but also has a desert area where you unfortunately get a status effect that can really get annoying during combat because it lowers your action points. And as with Sicil, you also have a little bit of a burning area in here. The third area you move through is the realm of Hyberheim, which is a snowy area which has a castle as the main part of the area, but it also has a fire area, surprisingly. And the last open world area you will move through is the Phantom Forest area, which includes a forest and also the town of Hunter's Edge. Now this place doesn't have a fire area, but it does have a swamp. This area is by far my least favorite one in the game. As I said, the Phantom Forest really got to me, but we'll talk about that and the areas in detail while we recap the story. But with my description of the areas, you might see a pattern here, and also a pattern with most games that I've played in this series for some reason. The start is always really strong, but then I feel like the games always drop off towards the end. I absolutely adore the first two areas of the game, but to me the game just dips a little bit after that. And part of that is the mechanics of the game on top of the problems I had with navigating the traps of the overworld. Some of the dungeons are designed the same way and really get my blood boiling. The other thing that made me choose the title of the video as a true test of patience is the fact that if you don't have any healing items or characters that have a healing ability, you have to travel back to your hub. Now luckily you can fast travel there, but once you arrive there you have to make your way to the area that has beds so you can lie down in them to heal your team. And it feels like at least 5 hours of your total playtime are spent on either going to the hub and laying down or waiting for the character that has the healing ability to be able to use the ability again. So if you want to play this game, just be prepared and bring a lot of patience with you. Let's talk about a positive that stood out for me though, and that is the companions in this game. Now as with most RPGs, you have a nice variety of companions to choose from in this game, and you can also find all of them early on in the game, so you don't have to worry about replacing someone halfway through the game because you met someone way cooler than the rest. And I like when games do that because you can really get attached to the companions that way and also learn how to use them in an easier area. So as mentioned earlier, you can have up to 2 companions since your created characters take up 2 slots of the party, so be wise while building your character. I liked my team to have a combination of a ranger, a wizard, and 2 melee-based characters. So one character that I created was a wizard and the other one more of a knight. Now all of the companions you can get you find in and around Sicil. With the first one you will most likely find being Medora, who is a source hunter just like your main characters are, and she's also a knight who prefers two-handed weapons. The next one you can find is Jahan. He's your local elemental wizard with a focus being on water and air magic, which can make him into a healer for your team and also the teleporter of the team. Next up we meet Bear Daughter, who's a ranger that uses her bow mainly, and I think the bow abilities are some of the strongest ones in the game since there are multiple multi-hit attacks in that class. And the last companion with a story that we can meet is Wolgraf, who's your rogue, and that means he's really important for some later dungeons because he gets to use the invisibility ability. Try to say that a bunch of times in a row. Now I mentioned that these are companions with a story because there are also henchmen that you can hire in your hub, which have all types of builds, but for the sake of this video I won't cover them since I didn't really use them myself. Now let us jump into the story of Divinity Original Sin so we can go into more detail on some of the things I have teased. So welcome to Rivellon. We start our journey as 2 source hunters making their way to Sicil to uncover a murder mystery. Source hunters are members of a group dedicated to finding and destroying a dangerous type of magic called source. And since the suspected murderer is a sorcerer, we got sent to Sicil. And since the victim was the town councillor, Jake, it is important that we find out who the killer is. Upon our arrival, we find Saisio under siege by an orc army and the undead. So we actually have to fight our way to the town. On our way there, we run into the conduit for the first time, who will turn out to be a more important character throughout the story. We also get the option to go through an advanced tutorial here, and because I needed to freshen up on the combat, I decided to go for it. So we finally make our way into town. It is here where we have multiple options to go for, and I think this first area is just perfect for teaching you the game and giving you a lot of different things to do. We also run into Ahu here, who is a man that can transform into a cat and will be helping us throughout our journey. As mentioned earlier, it is also here that we can find all of the different companions, who all have a pretty interesting background to them. Medora is another source hunter, and we find her chilling in the King's Crab's Inn, which is where the murder took place. She deeply believes in the ways of the source hunters and will judge you if you go against them with the choices you make in the game. We also meet Bear Daughter, who is being kept as a prisoner in a cage. If we talk to the guards, we can get them to free her. She's a kid of the forest and was actually raised by a bear. The reason she ended up in a cage is because she bit a legionnaire who surprised her by sneaking up from behind. Making our way to the house of the mayor, we go to the library on the second floor. It is here that we meet Jahan. Jahan is a wizard, but he despises dark magic and demons since he sold his soul to the demon Balberith about 1,000 years ago. And last on the list is Wolgraf. He lives in the tunnels under Saisiot Cemetery. He gets through life by stealing from people, but avoids stealing from poor people since they also have little to nothing. He's also unable to speak, so he mainly writes down things or gestures what he wants us to know. After gathering our party, we make our way back to the King Crab's Inn, where we take a look at the crime scene. It is here that we also run into our first Starstone. This takes us to another realm called the End of Time, which will also become our hub area and is mainly referred to as the homestead in this game. It is here that we meet the imp named Zigzags, who tells us that the end of the world is close since the void is coming to destroy everything. We also find the Tapestry of Time here, which is basically a collection of our memories that we need to uncover during our travels. The homestead has a bunch of different rooms to uncover, and to unlock each new area, we need to find all of the Starstones in this game. These areas include a hall where all of your companions hang out, if you don't take them along, and you can hire some henchmen there as well. Then you have your sleeping area, which has a chest for each of your two main characters, and also a mirror where you can change your appearance. Then there are a bunch of different merchants. These go from just normal merchants to elemental specific merchants, and the more Starstones you unlock, the more you learn about your character and you fill out the Tapestry of Time. Back in the King Crab's Inn, we can question some of the folks there to try and figure out what happened the night of the murder. We can also talk to the people that have connections to the victim around town. And I really like this part, and I'll be honest with you, the whole first area up until the point where you figure out the murderer could have been its own 20-hour long game, and it would have been fine as it is. The amount of side activities in Saisio is just staggering. There are so many little side quests you can start doing in this area, or just focus on the main story parts. While investigating the murder, we find out that Jake's body has disappeared, and at the same time, Evelyn, who works at the town's healing house, has also left the town in a hurry. So we ask Thaliron, the owner of the healing house, where Evelyn's house is so that we can investigate it. And yes, I still don't have a clue how to pronounce his name. In her house, we find her journal and a reveal spell, which will come in handy later. So the journal tells us about a hidden lab on a beach in Saisio where Evelyn seems to be hiding. So we make our way into said lab to confront Evelyn. Turns out she took the counselor's body and turned him into a zombie to get some information from him. And now it's time for us to take out Evelyn so that we can question Jake some more. After killing Evelyn, Jake reveals to us that Leandra was involved in his death. Leandra is the person that we know as the Conduit. We also find out that she wants to revive Brachus Rex in a chapel here in Saisio. So our next target is clear. Stop Leandra from reviving Brachus Rex. Into the chapel we go, but unfortunately we are too late, and this will become a pattern as Leandra is pretty much always a step ahead of us throughout the story. So we get to fight Brachus Rex now, which is a decent challenge, but not the most difficult one in this game. Upon defeating him, we find a Starstone, which unlocks the first of our memories on the Tapestry of Time.
Long ago, two great generals led mankind in a terrible war. The dreaded Void Dragon threatened all of existence, and man and gods alike joined swords to stop it. The two generals were celebrated as the rulers of all, and even the gods paid them tribute.
With Brachus Rex defeated and one of our memories restored, we get the news that there is a White Witch in Lucula Forest, and that White Witch also happens to be Leandra's sister. So off to Lucula Forest we go, and our first stop is Silverglen, the main town of the next area, which has everything that you really need throughout the game, and it's the town that I come back to the most because of the amount of merchants that the town has. You can pretty much get a skill book for every playstyle in this place. Now with the good, there's also some bad, and that is the fact that this town houses the Immaculates, which is a cult that follow Leandra. So our next plan is to infiltrate the cult and destroy them from the inside. We also find out that there are mines in this area that have been taken over by the Immaculates, since the mines have tenebrium in them, a resource used to craft weapons, but you need to be skilled in handling it, and if you are not, you get infected by rot, which will slowly kill you. But you have one quest in this town where a guy wants you to bring him some tenebrium, and he gives you a bag which allows you to carry it, and if you decide to keep the tenebrium at the end of the quest, you get a tome that allows you to wield tenebrium without any worries. Now the cool thing Larian has done here is the fact that if you sell tenebrium to a merchant that isn't able to handle the material, they will get infected by rot. And these are the little details that I really appreciate about their games. Once again, we have multiple ways to handle our journey from here. We can either head straight for the mines or head for the house of the White Witch. So in my head I thought, well, let's go for the White Witch first, since that will be more important for us. And we make our way over to her house just to find it being protected by a spell. And on the outside we have Immaculates guarding it, so of course we had to take out the Immaculates first and then talk to the mushrooms around the area to figure out how to shut down the barrier. Once we shut down the barrier, we get to enter the cabin. In there we find a mirror that teleports us to a cave which has more Immaculates for us to fight, and a lake that can teleport us at the end. The lake takes us to the next open area of the game, the snowy Hyberheim, which is where Ikara is being kept as a prisoner by Boreas, the king of this realm. Boreas works hand in hand with Leandra. She actually gave him a staff to overpower the other elemental kings, and we need to get the staff to free them and Ikara, since Ikara is being kept in an ice prison that can only be destroyed by the other elementals. While traversing the Hyberheim area, we also run into Leandra in a forge where she's working on bloodstones, which are star stones tainted by blood of slain victims that she uses to power up her army. But instead of fighting us, Leandra once again disappears and lets us fight her little Immaculates. Well, little is actually an understatement, since they do turn into some kind of monster with the power of the bloodstones. After taking out the Immaculates, it was time to head into Boreas' castle to slay the King of Ice. And it is here that my hatred for some of the game's mechanics really started, since I spent more time on my back after slipping on frozen ground than actually moving around the area. And it is also in this area that we meet my worst enemy in this game, the Sentinels. These guys are statues that trigger upon seeing you and can do anything from spawning in enemies to shooting fireballs or setting the whole ground on fire. And when they see you, they will shout my most hated line in this whole game. Intruder spied. I swear, there's just something in me that gets triggered every time I hear those words. It's almost like a deep-lying trauma inside of me. Anyways, Boreas wants to fight us, and he's actually one of the most challenging bosses for myself personally, since he summons enemies from the different elements, and if I noticed it correctly, also changes which elemental weakness he has depending on which elementals he summons. After defeating Boreas, we can pick up the elemental staff, which will begin talking to us since it has the other kings being trapped inside of it, and they tell us to go to the forge where we met Leandra to destroy the staff and free them, so we go and do that, and in return we get to free Ikara using the help of the other kings. After freeing her, she catches us up on the night of Jake's murder from her point of view.
One night, as I slept, I had a sudden revelation. No dream, but a vision. My sister Leandra and my lover Zandalor. I didn't understand, but I recognized their location. Syceel's King Crab Inn. I arrived and looked through their window, but inside, everything was wrong. Leandra had fled, and Counselor Jake stood over the wizard, a knife in his hand and hate in his eyes. As I watched, he drove the dagger deep into Zandalor's heart, and I was too late to stop him. In that moment, I broke. I saw before me not a man, not even a beast, but evil incarnate. And I used Source to slay him. On the floor lay Zandalor. In my hands, I held Jake's life force. I had sworn never to use Source, but I couldn't walk away. And so I did the unthinkable. I used the Counselor's life to save Zandalor's. He was alive, but only just. Betrayal. Murder. Source. We were all of us guilty now.
Now with Ikara freed and on our side, it is time that we head into the mines to see what the Immaculates are cooking up in that place. Turns out that they are manipulating the undead to farm tenebrium for them, since they can't be afflicted by the rot. But we also meet a new type of enemy in these mines, an enemy type that everyone, even the Immaculates, are afraid of, and that is the Death Knight. They roam around these mines and are unkillable, which makes the whole area into a stealth mission, so I decided to use Wolfgraf here since he has become my main sneak character. He only comes out for areas that require me to sneak through parts of it and never does anything else for me, but it is what it is. At least he has some purpose for me. So we use him to sneak through the mines until I run into what looks like a workshop for the Death Knights. It is also here that Leandra decides to show up and gives us another monologue about her plan before sending Death Knights after us. Since we can't fight them, we need to run into the closest mirror, which teleports us to some close by temple ruins where Leandra has set up a lab with all of her notes. It doesn't get better than that for us, since we now know how to counter her plans, since she has a spell in the lab that can make the Death Knights killable, but for that we need Leandra's blood to combine it with the spell to create a tome that we can use. But that is not our biggest worry, since that is getting the hell out of the mines in one piece. After going through a couple of mirrors, we end up back in the forest with a new target to go after. But first we gotta infiltrate the Immaculates. We do that by doing a trial in the forest area before our covers get blown. And we have to fight Loic, the leader of the Silver Glen Immaculates, and his buddies in the trial chamber. After that, we make our way into Sacred Stone, a town run completely by Immaculates, and just because I'm feeling good, I wiped out the whole village. Well, it turns out there's also an Immaculate chapel in the forest, so let's go over there now and see what awaits us there. And would you look at that? Mangoth is here. I have no clue who he is, but he sends some monsters after us that we take out, and he also left behind a Starstone for us. How nice of him. Using the lever in this room moves the altar to the side and opens up a downstairs room, which has a puzzle in there. After solving the puzzle, Mangoth decided it was his time to die, so we took care of him rather quickly. In the room that opened up, we find a note of Leandra and a hatch which leads down to her quarters. And it is down here where we find her blood, so that we can craft the spell to destroy the Death Knights. This was all placed there in case of her death. So backup plans so that the Immaculates could stop the army, which is an interesting bit of lore right there. Since she doesn't want the plan to go forward if she's gone, she wants the Immaculates to deactivate the Death Knights so that no people get hurt. Now that we have Ikara and the spell to undo the Death Knights, it is time for us to head on into Hunter's Edge, which is where Zandalor's house is, since we have to find him and get him to join us. So welcome to my least favorite area in the whole game, the Phantom Forest. This area is just full of traps, death knights, and enemies that like to explode themselves and take out the whole party. And then there's the trial area, which is full of my favorite thing in the game, the Sentinels. So the area is split into the forest part and the town of Hunter's Edge. Hunter's Edge is our first target, as we can't enter the Phantom Forest just yet. When we reach the town, we see that it has been taken over by Leandra's henchmen. This time she didn't use Immaculates though. She hired mountain warriors and orcs to take over the town. And when we arrive, there are only a handful of people left, and they are hidden away since they were Zandalor's servants and know how to get into his house. So we need to find the servants hidden in the town, and I really like the way Hunter's Edge is designed. It comes close to the High of Scythia for me. I would even call it my second favorite quest line. I really like the detective aspect in this area and the fact that you can have the two factions start a war against each other, but you can also just skip the war part and head straight for Zandalor. And the game has a couple of those moments where you can decide to take part in it or just completely skip things. So while looking around the town, we find a key hidden in a beehive and also find out that the entrance to the hidden cellar is under a big rock. So we find said rock and open the hatch with the key to find Zandalor's servants. They aren't willing to help us at the moment, since they want to see a sign that we can be trusted. So we head back to Ikara, who gives us a ring that we can show to the servants. After showing them the ring, they let us use the teleport mirror in the next room to go to Zandalor's house. Upon arrival in Zandalor's house, every possible trap gets triggered in this house, so we somehow have to make our way through this place and up to the second floor. It is here where the waypoint is that we can use to transport the servants out of here. So we turn all of the traps off and let the servants leave Hunter's Edge. We can also find an amulet in here that protects us in the Phantom Forest and lets us finally enter the woods area. But before we do that, there's still a knight's tomb at the back of Hunter's Edge, which has a starstone for us to collect, so let's get that. Okay, another starstone in the bag, and I actually forgot to do something the whole time, and that is saving our homestead. Since when you enter this area, it gets attacked and meteors will constantly hit you while traversing the homestead. And the only way to fix the problem will be to head to the ruins back in Lucula Forest and taking down the massive bloodstone the Immaculates put there. After destroying the bloodstone, we travel back to the homestead where we get hit with some more memories that we've unlocked. And since I haven't been here in a while, there's actually 2 memories, so let's look at them.
After the war was won, the Void Dragon remained a great threat to all existence. And so, upon the anvil of creation, the God Box was crafted. The void was locked within, but still the question remained: who would guard the box? The 2 generals offered themselves. They would give up life and glory to stand sentinel. Transformed into immortal beings, they would be the void's eternal guardians. They placed the box and the guardians in the first garden, home of Astarte and of the world's most beautiful power, Source. For time immemorial, the guardians stood by the God Box, no longer human in body or in mind, but duty personified. For millennia, the God Box was flanked by the two devoted guardians. But Astarte's playmate, a creature called the Trife, turned her attention to the forbidden box. "I may know a way to destroy what's inside," hissed the scheming creature. "Together, we can set the guardians free. Open its lid, Astarte, and we can have a look together." Astarte trusted her friend and assented. She pitied the guardians and welcomed a chance to free them. "Let me help you," she whispered into the ear of one. "I know your duty, but you both deserve a chance at freedom." "Haven't you suffered enough of this chore?" she asked the other. "Look, your companion is free already." The guardians, unaccustomed to such attention, started. She had planted a seed of curiosity within them, rekindled a desire that had, for eons, lain dormant. Slowly, they glanced at one another, and the Trife's trap was sprung.
So that is our backstory. We used to be the protectors of the God Box until we fumbled and now the world is ending. What a great job we did. Speaking of doing a great job, in the Phantom Forest area you can also finish a bunch of side quests for companions or people you know, like good old Ahu, who turns out to actually be a cat that got transformed into a human by Cassandra. Now you might ask yourself, who even is Cassandra? Since I never mentioned her before, she's actually the sister of Brachus Rex from the first act of the game. And she decided to transform her cat into a man so she wouldn't be lonely, and that is how Ahu was created. So you can finally meet her in this area and decide the fate of Ahu, but I low-key forgot this existed until writing the script for the game, since you have to find a way to weaken Cassandra before the fight. Much like the Death Knights, she's also invulnerable until you trigger a certain thing, but I tried fighting her, then went back to doing some other things, and before remembering to check back on the quest, I had finished the game thinking I did everything. Another part that actually isn't missable is your meeting with Balberith, since he has locked up the spirit of the forest, and the spirit has the rune we need to enter the Source Temple, which is the place that Leandra is searching for. Balberith, if you remember, is the demon that made a deal with Jahan 1,000 years ago and took his soul, so this is actually his final side quest mission. Now you have the choice here to work for Balberith to get the rune from him, or just be insane like me and attack him to get into a fight and free the spirit that way. If you kill Balberith, he actually drops another Starstone, which leads us to remembering another part of our story.
With the guardians distracted, Astarte lifted the lid of the God Box. What she saw was nothingness. Astarte had called forth the Void Dragon, whose sole purpose was to undo all creation. Caught off guard and terrified, the Guardians, sworn protectors, fled. But Astarte stood firm. She grabbed hold of the dragon and hurled it and herself into the reaches of the void. Here she battled the dragon for all eternity. For his deception, the Trife was cast out of the first creation. He fell to Rivellon, a monstrous creature unworthy of the realm of the gods. Since that terrible day, Source has been tainted by the presence of the Void. A once beautiful power has become corrupted, and those attempting to wield it often go mad in the process.
Now with the rune in hand, it was time for us to enter the Source Temple, but of course it wouldn't be that easy since it has a puzzle around it that is full of traps. After mastering all the traps, we come face to face with Rouse and Axaroth, which I gotta say, his last name does sound like it could be a town from the Warcraft universe. Anyways, he's a pushover, so we beat him up real quick so we can finally enter the Source Temple to find Leandra. Well, it turns out I didn't have enough Starstones to enter just yet, so I went on a bit of a journey to collect the missing ones. And we also get the origins of the Starstones explained in this last memory.
The Guardians had failed. Source was tainted, the void was loosed, and all that stood between Rivellon and annihilation was Astarte herself. Overcome by guilt, they hoped to undo their failure by undoing reality itself. And so, they ripped their threads from the tapestry of time, so becoming unknown to history and unknowing of themselves for all eternity. As their threads fell to Rivellon like shooting stars, they hardened into crystals the people called Starstones.
Okay, back to the Source Temple. It is here that we find Zandelor. He isn't in the best shape, so Ikara needs to heal Zandelor and he will join us in the final fight. Since we found the last Starstone, we can finally enter the first garden, the area where Leandra is waiting for us. This is the point of no return, since once you enter, you cannot come back out to Rivellon again. This finale is actually pretty cool since you get transported into this nightmarish area where you have to make your way through the King Crab's Inn to find the Trife, which is the Void's little henchman. And once you beat him, you get transported back to the garden. Back here, you finally catch up to Leandra, and because I didn't do Ikara's quest, the two aren't bound to each other, since in this universe, the concept of a soul forge exists. It's when two characters are connected to each other, and if one of them dies, the other one will also die. There are two former soul forges we come across in this game's story, one of them being Leandra and Ikara, while the other set was Brachus Rex and Cassandra. So since they are not connected, we take out Leandra, pick up her wand, and head through the Waypoint Shrine and into Eden. It is here where Astarte awaits with the God Box by her side. But as soon as we talk to her, the Void Dragon decides to show up and fight us. This fight actually has a really cool unique game over screen that only appears if you fail this fight. So after seeing the end a couple of times, I managed to completely destroy the dragon using all of my meteorite scrolls that I found on my journey and save the day once and for all. After beating the Void, we return to the Source Hunter Academy, where we can catch up with all of our companions one more time before riding off into the sunset.
And thus the Guardians lived out the remainder of their mortal days. The end.
So that ends our time with the Source Hunters in Rivellon. Now, please let me know how you like the story recap style I used for this video, since I tried to make the video a bit shorter than some of the other episodes. since they always turned out to be over an hour long, and I would love to know what you guys prefer. Do you want me to dive into side content as well, or just focus on the main story of the game? Leave me some feedbacks in the comments. And if you want to know more about the game's story, I recommend the video Mortismo Gaming made about the game. I will link the video in the description for you guys to check out. Seeing that his video is over 2 hours long, this video would probably have been even longer if I went in depth with everything. But yeah, let's get back to rating the game. Now, as always in these videos, we rank the game from 1 to 5 stars. And even though I have my problems with the game and got really annoyed at times, I still think this is one of the better RPGs that I've played on this series. But it is not my favorite one. And I do still prefer Baldur's Gate 3 over this when it comes to Larian Studios games. All in all, I recommend everyone should check this game out though. You just have to be prepared for a slower experience that can test your patience. And if you are not a patient person, just maybe don't go for it. I think a more casual RPG experience would be wiser. The game also doesn't hold your hands as much as newer games do. You don't have a real quest log, you just have a journal instead, which gives you vague clues on what you should do, and I can see it being a problem for most people. I maybe checked the journal a handful of times throughout my playthrough because I just forgot it even existed, and I thought it wasn't really that helpful since I remember most of the things I had to do. But maybe I should have checked it out more, then I wouldn't have forgotten Cassandra and Ahu. So to finally give a rating to this game, to me Divinity Original Sin is a solid 4 out of 5 for me. And with that, it is also not my best RPG, but it does show some potential, and I'm really excited to see what Larian Studios cooked up with Divinity Original Sin 2. Which we will not be checking out straight away since I want to take a little break when doing sequels in this series so that I don't burn myself out on doing RPGs that are too similar to each other in terms of style. And you might have seen that with the previous episodes, we always switch up the style of the RPG we play. And I also think that's what makes the genre so great. It's the variety of the games you get to choose from. If you guys have an RPG that you want me to check out, leave it in the comments below and hit that subscribe button if you want to see more of these videos. And again, please let me know how you want the story recap portion of these videos to look. That's all from me today. I will see you in the next episode. Until then, have a beautiful rest of your day, good night, whatever time it is for you, and I'm out.